Hey guys, Nathan here. Today I just wanted to do a little guide on how to get started with 40k in Tabletop Simulator. So we put up a battle report the other day, which was a battle report done on Tabletop Simulator, and I have a few comments of people that seemed really interested about it. So I thought it might be worthwhile just to do sort of a beginner's guide on how to get started with Tabletop Simulator. So to start, Tabletop Simulator itself is essentially a physics engine that allows you to play games that were made for the tabletop on a PC, essentially. That's kind of the base of what it is. So there's a few games that come with it normally, and loads of people have modded in other games, and one of those is 40k. So straight off the bat, obviously it's not designed specifically for 40k on the tabletop, but the guys who have modded tables and the units and everything like that, they've done a really good job of that, and it's the closest you'll get to playing on the tabletop without actually playing on the tabletop, and it's almost exactly the same. There's a few little nuances which I'll go over once we get into it. But essentially, you can definitely have battles with your friends or whatever. You don't have to do this, but I would highly recommend checking out the 40k Tabletop Simulator Discord, which I'll link in the video description. There's some really good resources on there. There's some fixes for a couple of issues that I'll go into in the next section where we create our armies and find the tables. But overall, it's just really good to get on there because they hold events and stuff, and you can actually find games through there if you've got no one else to play with. So with that being said, let's jump straight into the first part which you're going to need, which is actually the table to play on. What you're going to want to do is you're going to want to go to Create, just straight from the Tabletop Simulator main menu, go to Single Player, and you'll be basically presented with this screen which has games on it. Okay, so the classic is I think it's the games that basically come with Tabletop Simulator. There's DLCs which are, I'm assuming some of these are probably games that are actually proper board games in real life that you can download as DLC. Games Workshop doesn't actually endorse this, so it's completely unsupported by them. It's just supported basically 100% through the modding community, the 40k community on Tabletop Simulator. Essentially, what we do here is there is a nice feature in Tabletop Simulator that allows you to view the workshop through the game. So, and it allows you to load workshop items in real time, which is really handy because it means that you don't have to go to the workshop, find what you want, then go back into the game, see if it works, come back out of it again. So you can just add things as and when you want to, which is really good. So what I've done is I've actually deleted the table that I use, and I've deleted my Grey Knights army. So I'm going to be adding those again, and what we'll do is we'll build my Grey Knights list, and then I'll show you setting up the table and everything like that. So what you want to do first is you want to get a table. So we're going to go to Workshop. We're going to come in here, and this is all of the workshop items that I have on my Tabletop Simulator. So you can see here I've already got a few armies. There's a table over here which I don't use because I found a better table. So let's go ahead and get the table. So what you're going to want to do is you want to go to Browse up in the top right hand corner of the workshop. So once that's loaded, you'll be presented with the Tabletop Simulator workshop. So if we scroll down a bit, as you can see, there's loads of different games in here. None of them are relevant to 40k because, like I said, Tabletop Simulator is essentially a game that you can play other games in. So, and there's a lot of mod support for it. So there's tons of add-ons and stuff. Obviously, it's not specifically designed for 40k, so you're gonna have to search for what you're specifically looking for. So regarding the tables, essentially you're going to have to load in a table, then obviously your army. So the table's quite easy. The army's a little bit more difficult, but we'll go into that. I've tried out quite a few tables, and I found the best one is the one that's made by a guy called Bacon Cat Bug. I believe he's quite active on the Tabletop Simulator Discord, but essentially his table has lots of stuff that makes it much easier to do, like deployment and stuff like that, and also it has loads of counts and stuff on it to make it easier to actually keep track of the game. So what we're going to do, in the search bar, you want to type BCB 40k map base, and then press enter. So what we've got, the first one that comes up is this BCB 40k map base. So obviously you can add it by the plus on the thumbnail, but we're going to go in here and we're just going to subscribe to this. Okay. So let's get out of that and let's just close that. So we've got that in here now. I'm just going to see if it's going to load up. Now it can take a while for this to load up because essentially what it's doing is it's pulling down loads of assets off of the internet, as far as I'm aware. So most of the assets, like the dice, not the dice. I think the dice are actually as part of the game, but there's loads of custom skins and everything that you're going to see that actually has to be hosted somewhere else and then pulled down into the game. So let's just select a player. This is the map. So the reason why I like this is you can actually, the way that he's made it is you can select different table sizes to start with. So we're just going to select the standard 2K size of 6x4. You do this every single time you load the map in. So let's confirm that. And the reason why I like this is because of all of these controls up here. So basically what you've got is you've got the option here of actually setting your deployment zone, and before we do that, you've got all these preset terrains, so you don't actually have to set them up yourself. So on some other maps, all you're given is basically the board and then some bags that are filled with different types of terrain. You have to set it up all yourself, and then you have to lock the terrain to the table so that you can't knock it over. This just all does it for you. So if I was going to click ITC Ruins, what will happen is it will basically just load in all those assets from what I've clicked on. So there you can see we've got the table there, which is the table that we played on in mine and Ewan's battle report. And then some nice other stuff is it's got this deployment zone option where it will line out your deployment zones for you, depending on what mission or deployment you've rolled for. So it's just nice and easy. It takes away the pain of trying to dice out your deployment zones. That can be kind of a pain in real life. Well, it's even more of a pain trying to do it in a game. So yeah, that's the table loaded and set up. So we don't need this for now. So what I'm going to do, we'll go back to the start menu and then we'll go through trying to get an army. So we're back at the main menu now, and you just want to go through that same process that you did before. So go and create, go to single player. We're presented with this games window again. You want to go back into workshop, and now we want to find our army. So I just want to talk a little bit about the armies. So Tabletop Simulator, as far as I'm aware, has been out for a few years now, and it seems to me, I mean, I've gone through and looked and checked out quite a few armies, and it seems to me like quite a lot of them are not supported now. And what I mean by that is there's some armies, specifically Space Marines, it's quite hard to find a full Primaris Space Marine army, because most of them, I believe, were created before Primaris were even a thing. So if you go and have a look at Space Marines, most of them are just standard old Marines. And also some of them were created years ago. And like I said, when we were talking about the tables and how it loads assets in, it's the same with miniatures. So some of these mods the actual hosting of the image files that creates the miniatures on the table is actually broken, and they're not there anymore. Now, there is a way around that. Essentially, some of the guys in the Tabletop Simulator Discord have the assets there, so you can just ask for them. What you can do is then you can then just put them wherever you want and then link them yourselves. So let's just go and grab an army. So I want to grab my Grey Knights army. So I'm going to do the same thing as you do for the table. We're just going to go to Browse, wait for the Steam Workshop to load up, and I'm just going to search Grey Knights. So you can see there's a few of them that have loaded up. Essentially, what I would advise is that you go through each of these ones that looks decent. So obviously this one here, this is just a Terminator model. This one looks like an army, so let's go in and have a look at this. So it doesn't really have any information about the army itself. I have actually already created my Grey Knights army. I just deleted it just for the purpose of this guide. I know that this one already has all the models in it. So, and I believe it's still supported as well. Just click subscribe, as you did last time with the table, with the table. So that's subscribed to. Then we're going to come out. Let's just close that down. So in here we've now got our Grey Knights 8th edition. So now what you've got is you've got your army, you've got your table, and we're sort of halfway to being able to play a game. So what you now need to do is you actually need to create your list. So let's go ahead and load up the Grey Knights table. So what you'll notice as this is going on, you'll have this loading thing that's just disappeared on there. It loaded really quickly for me. Essentially what that's doing is that is loading the assets from where they're hosted. So that will happen every single time you pull an army or an object from one mod into another. So essentially what we're going to be doing is we're going to be creating a Grey Knight list and then saving that as its own object so that you can then import it to the table that we've downloaded, and then you can play with that specific list. Most of these army lists that you can download from the workshop, they're all pretty much the same. They're all kind of laid out in the same way. You've got your HQs, troops, fast attack and stuff. Other armies are laid out, a little bit different, but essentially they're all the same. You've got each of your sort of selections to fill your detachment slots. So luckily this one has a bit of an open space here anyway. Some of them are quite cramped, so what I usually do is, if I know that I don't have any fortifications, Lords of War, flyers, transports, I'll just highlight that, select it, delete all of them, and then I'll use this space to build my army. I'll just go over the controls a little bit. So obviously you've got your mouse controls. You can click and drag with the left mouse button to select multiple objects. The right mouse button just brings up a menu for camera options. Unless you click on the model, then the right mouse button will bring up a few options in here. Essentially what the right mouse button selection will do, if you click on a model that has different states, essentially there's some assets that have multiple files linked to them, so you can switch those states. Now, for 40k on Tabletop Simulator, what this essentially means is different loadouts for different models. So you can see here I've got a Terminator with halberd. I can right click on it, go to state, and these states should tell me exactly what other loadouts that unit can have, or what other loadouts are available. Obviously, this isn't going to be the same for every single model in every single army. Some people have just created like Gene Stealers, for instance. Like if you have the Gene Stealer model from a specific mod, it might not have the option to give them an acid maw. It might not have the option to give them scything talons. They might just come with rending clause, and you can't change any of that. Luckily, this one does. So, for instance, if I wanted to change this Terminator from halberd to a sword, I'll just come in here, find the sword, click sword, and you can see that the model's just changed there. So just going back to the controls, you move around with WASD. As I mentioned, you've got your mouse controls here and the right-click options. You've then got, if you hold your right mouse button, you will then rotate, so you can sort of freely move around the board, and the mouse wheel zooms in and out. Let's go to building the list. I know that I need Drago in my list. So what you can do is you can just select the model, or just pick him up with the left mouse button and move him. You don't really want to be doing this with multiple models, or multiples of models that you actually need in your list. So for instance here, there's only one interceptor with a halberd, so you don't really want to be moving him and just him, just in case you lose that and then you have to reload the whole mod back in again. What you want to do is just select it so that it's got a yellow outline, do a Control-C to copy it, and then do Control-V and you'll spawn another one in. So what you can do essentially is, if you wanted a 10-man unit, you just paste 5 of them in, you can then copy it, paste another 5 of them in, and you can kind of build your list that way. It's a good way of doing it for really big units, like a unit of 30 termagants or units of 30 cultists or something like that. You don't really want to be spamming Control-V to try and get 30 of them. You can just duplicate. So let's go ahead, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to build my list, and then I'll show you how to save it as an object to then import into the table. Okay, so here is my Grey Knight list. It's quite an easy one to build just because of how elite the army is. So I've got my all 4 characters for my 2 HQ slots in each battalion. Then I've got 6 troop choices in Strike Marines, and I've got 2 Paladin bombs. So it's quite nice with the Grey Knight one because there's a lot of customization on the models, as I was talking about, where you can switch the states. So I can actually have my Paladins with halberds and psi cannon, and then the Paragon, and then the ones with bolters and staves, and then just the ones with bolters and halberds. So it's quite good in some of the armies where you can actually customize like really down to what their loadout should actually be. So now that you've got your army, what we're going to want to do is going to want to select all of them, right click, and then come down to save object. Now what you'll get is a save objects window. What you want to do is just save that as something specific to the army. So I'll just save this as Grey Knight Paladins. Save that. Make sure it's saved down here in the chat window. And that's your army built and saved as its own object. So what we'll do is we'll go back to the main menu, and then we will set the table up with the army. Okay, so we're back at the main menu. What you're going to want to do is you're going to want to go back into Create. Now we could just go into single player, but what I'm going to do is just start a multiplayer game just to show you how to do the setup for that as well, if you want to host it. So go to multiplayer. In the server name, you're going to want to put something that other people can find, or that you can give to whoever you're playing with. Then just set up a server password, and then for the table that we're using, essentially you can have as many players up to 10 as you want, but only 2 can play, or you can have as many as you want playing essentially, but what this table does is it loads up a screen right at the start to ask you to select a team, and then that will put you on either side of the board, and anyone else can go into a spectator. So let's just leave that as default. I'm going to go into create server. So what it's going to do is it's going to give you the games window like it did before when we were setting up the table in the armies. What you want to go and do is load up the map first. So let's do that. So once the BCB table's loaded, it comes up as you might have seen when we loaded it up the first time, it comes up with this choose your seat thing. So like I was saying on the menu screen, you can have 2 players choosing either team, and then anyone else just goes into spectator. So let's just select blue. We get placed over here, and then obviously your opponent will get placed over here. Let's just set up the table like we did before. So choose your size. I'm loading in a 2K army, so let's just go for 6x4. That'll do that, and then obviously you want to select what terrain you want to use. So let's just go for ITC again. Okay, so the terrain's all loaded in. That was quite quick. Sometimes it can take a little while, so just be patient. And what we're going to do now is we're actually going to load our army into this clear space here. So what you're going to want to do, go to Objects, then go to Saved Objects, and what you'll have here is all of your armies or objects that you've already saved. Now, if you just have a quick look at this, obviously here is my Grey Knights army, so I've just got the whole army saved as one object, named as Grey Knight Paladins. What I've found is sometimes when people have quite a high ping or a bit of an unstable connection, loading in a full army when it has way more assets. So if you were playing like Demon Horde or Tyranids with lots of little Gribblies or anything like that, what I would say to do is to save each detachment as its own object as opposed to the entire army. So what you can see that I've done here, if you've watched the previous battle report, you'll know that I ran a triple battalion with Kraken, Jormungandr, and Behemoth. So what I've got here is Kraken, Jormungandr, Behemoth. So essentially what would happen with this is you would just load each element of the army in to then make your full army, waiting for the assets to load before you then drag the other one in. So on the subject of dragging, that is basically what you do. So grab the object, so we're going to grab our Grey Knight Paladins, pull it onto the table and just release the button, and then it will load it to where you drag the object to. So obviously it's loading the assets now from wherever they're hosted. And like I said, what you want to do is if you've got a big army and you're saving each detachment as its own object, what you're going to want to do is wait for those assets to load and then load in the other one. So yeah, let's click off of that. Now, what you're going to want to do on this table, I think it does it automatically, but when the other person loads in, what you need to do is you need to come up to the top right here where you can see my Steam name. Their Steam name will be below this. What you want to do is right click on that, and there'll be an option to promote them. It's really important that you do this, otherwise they won't have access to do anything on the table. So, but like I said, if you're using the BCB table, I believe it automatically does that anyway. So I can't recall having to go in and promote someone when I've been using this table. But if you're using another table, just remember that you need to go up to their name, right click on it, and then promote them to allow them to actually load in objects and move stuff. So here's our army. It's all loaded in. Obviously, the other person would load in their army, and then you can start playing the game. So what you're probably going to want to do is either decide beforehand or however you want to select the mission. I'll just go over the dice rolling on this. I'm just going to get rid of these just because I wanted to show you how the BCB one works. You might already know this from watching the battle report that we did on Tabletop Simulator. But essentially selecting any of these buttons will actually spawn the dice that you want in. So if I selected 1, it would spawn 1, 5, it would spawn 5 more than you've already got, which is really good for getting numbers of dice. So if I wanted 35, I'd do 25 and 10 to get 35, okay? So what we're going to want to do is roll for the mission. Now the way that you roll dice in Tabletop Simulator, you can just, because it's a physics engine, you can just literally pick them up with the left mouse button and then throw them and release the button, and it will roll over here. There is a lot easier way to do it though. So let's spawn in a couple of dice. So what you want to do, select the dice so that they're highlighted in yellow, and then you literally just want to keep pressing R on your keyboard. And what that'll do is that'll roll the dice. So do that a couple of times just so it spins on loads of different axes, and there you go, there's your roll. Now you can do this obviously with any number of dice, so if we spawned 25 in here, then you can do it for 25. And there you go, you might get a few cocked dice, but you can pick those out just with the left mouse button and move them. And then obviously what you can do is you can just select those ones, highlight them, press R again, and roll those ones. Now obviously that goes for doing any re-rolls as well, so if we were re-rolling out of this, if we were re-rolling 2s, just move the 2s out, select them, re-roll them. So it's pretty simple. Just going over how you do that again. So you have to highlight it. If you hold on to it and try and roll it, it does this weird thing where it like flips the sides, and then you can't actually roll it properly. So you have to make sure that you're not clicked on it. So what some people tend to do is hold it like that, and then it will just do this weird thing where the sides just flip around over and over again. You want to let go of it, make sure that it's highlighted, then press R to roll all of them. And like I said, hit it a couple of times just so it spins on loads of different axes. And then if you're re-rolling ones, you can just select them, re-roll them. And there you go. So that's the rolling of the dice. There is this good little thing over here which will break down the rolls for you. So you can see there that we have 3 dice that rolled a 3, one that rolled a 4, one that rolled a 5, one that rolled a 6. The total down here is the total number of dice rather than the result. So it's quite good if you've got sort of like 10 to 20. What tends to happen is if you've got any more than that, if a dice comes out of this area, it won't count it. So don't always go by what's on here if you're rolling a really big number of dice. When you actually do the R to roll thing, if you're doing quite a lot of them, what tends to happen is even when you're doing the pressing R to roll them, they'll bash into each other and they'll go all over the place. So when you actually finish rolling them, you can see there's quite a few of them that are actually out of the zone of the counting. So it's quite good when you've got sort of a 10 to 20 dice, but other than that, the dice tend to fall out of range, and then this becomes obviously not accurate at all. So let's roll for the mission. Well, actually, the mission doesn't matter in this. Let's roll for the deployment. Now, I don't have my book open. I'm just going to guess that 3 is Dawn of War. There we go. So there's our Dawn of War deployment. Now, depending on the mission that we roll, obviously you're going to be placing objectives. Now, there's a thing in this game which locks objects to the table so that you can't move them, which is great for terrain and it's great for objective markers. The terrain is already locked to the board here, but we can quite easily just unlock it. You just right click on it, go to toggles, and then take the lock off, and then we can actually move all these bits of terrain. Obviously, we don't want to do that. These tokens, these objective markers over here, they're actually already locked to the table. So what you have to come and do is right click on one of them, unlock it, then you can move it. So for instance, if we wanted it in the middle of the board, put it in the middle of the board, right click, lock it again. Now, obviously I just guessed where that is going. So let's get on to the 2 main tools that you're actually going to be using. So we've been using the grab tool quite a lot. You can see up here there's quite a few tools to the left hand side. The grab tool is obviously the one that you're going to be using to highlight and grab your units and move them around and stuff. The other main one that you're going to be using is the line. So essentially what the line is it's a ruler. So obviously it would be very difficult to play a game of proper tabletop 40k without a ruler for measuring. So if you hover over the line button up here, you've got some different options. This is all default anyway, so it should already be defaulted to inches, to 2D, auto ruler mode, and edge hovering, which is perfect for what we're going to be doing. With this terrain, there's only a couple of buildings, I think it's these two, where you can actually get on top of here. Obviously, the 2D ruler option is two-dimensional. It's just flat, completely flat to the table. If you swap that to 3D, this is actually looking up, basically, to objects. So for the most part, you want to have it set on 2D. So if you needed to place a objective like 12 in or 18 in and then 12, what you can do, let's grab another one. So just coming in here and unlocking it again. Coming in here, you can put it down, and then we find that the best way to measure stuff is if you go to bird's eye view, because if you come from here, the perspective throws the measurement off a little bit. So it's way more accurate if you come up top and then do the measurement this way. So we need to move it back a little bit. Now, this can be quite tedious doing it like that. There's a much easier way to do it. It's just nice to show you how to use the ruler. So obviously you just select the line tool and you just left click and move it to wherever you want. And what I'll do is I'll put a couple of units on the board and you can see obviously how easy that is for measuring out charge distances and shooting and everything like that. So I'll just show you this trick that makes it a lot easier to measure stuff up and also move models as well. So essentially what you want to do, lift the object up. So you can see there I'm left clicking on it and it's rising off of the board. Once it's risen, don't move your mouse or anything. Hold the tab button down, which will then engage the line tool at the same time as the grab. And then when you move the mouse, it will actually ruler from the location that the object was in. So we want 18 inches. We can drop it down 18 inches. And then essentially what you can do is just measure the 12, which is obviously out, but you can just move it across a little bit. So let's just assume we've done all this setup and everything. I've rolled to go first, so let's just do some setup. So what you can do is, as you did when you were building the army, you can grab stuff in units. Another couple of keybinds that you need to be aware of is the Q and E. Q and E will rotate the models, or basically rotate your selection. So, which is obviously very handy. So what I tend to do is drag the models to the table. If I then want to split the model up, I just do it one by one and move them out. So let's just say we were going to spread the model out as far as possible. What you can then do is go back to the ruler tool, check the unit coherency and everything like that. So they're pretty much within 2 inches, which is fine. What you're going to be doing a lot is flitting between the grab and line tool. So I recommend that you do use the hotkeys for this. So it's F1 and F4. So let's just set the paladin unit up like that. And that's them done. Let's grab a character as well. It's got to be Drago. Okay, so I've set this up on the board. We're going into my first turn, so let's get rid of the deployment zones. Just move it back so that it says none, and then this will all be gone from there. So again, like we did with the objective markers, what you're going to want to do is you want to have the grab tool activated. You can do this with an entire model, entire unit. If I wanted to just move these paladins forward, they've got movement of 5. What I would do, highlight the whole unit, so make sure that every model is highlighted in yellow. right click on them to lift them off the table and select them, hold down the tab key and move them. So they can be 5, and then just drop them by releasing the left mouse button. Then obviously what you can do, if you don't want to move Drago, select the ruler key, check that they're still within reroll range, and if not, move Drago up as well. Okay, that's pretty much the basics. From this, you can pretty much just play a full game of 40k. One more thing, obviously the rolling of the dice is pretty simple once you get the hang of it. Another thing is using the dice as wound counters. You can change the side of the dice to whatever you want. You don't need to select the dice. I think if you actually select the dice, it won't actually work, which is correct. So all you want to do, hover your mouse over the dice and press the number on your keyboard of the one that you want it to be. So you can use dice as wound counters. So just pull a dice to your model and set the dice number. And yeah, that's pretty much it. So from there, you can pretty much play a full game of 40k. There's a few other options in here. I haven't actually gone through all of them. I'm sure there's quite a few things in here that make it a little bit easier. There's lots of tokens over here that you can use with your models. So, for instance, if you were in cover, you could put that against a model. I guess you would probably highlight it and then copy it so that you can put it on models. Just if you want to keep track of everything. I know most people just keep track in their head of what they're doing, but it might be quite good if you've got quite a psychic heavy army and you're putting prescience on one thing and then something, and then veterans on another unit, and then etc. etc. So you've got all these cool counters over here as well, so you can keep track of each player's command points from here really easily without using dice or anything, and you can also keep track of your victory points and also your player turns as well. So you can set the battle round, set each player's turns, just so you can keep track of what's going on. And yeah, that's pretty much it. So I hope you've enjoyed this guide and I hope it's helped. We're going to be bringing out a couple more battle reports on Tabletop Simulator as well, just because it's really easy to get set up and everything. So I hope you guys have enjoyed this. I hope you've learned how to set up a game of 40k on Tabletop Simulator and played, or if you already knew, maybe you've learned a couple of new tips. If you have enjoyed this video, then please consider liking and subscribing. It really helps us out. And yeah, we've got a couple of other battle reports coming. So yeah, we'll see you later. Bye.